The frying pan slipped from my hand and crashed onto the tiled floor. I stood there, frozen, as the sound echoed through the small kitchen. My fingers were shaking, but I was not sure if it was from fear or exhaustion. I had not slept properly in weeks, maybe months. I had not kept track. There were still pieces of eggshell on the counter. Breakfast was half made. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly, reminding me that I was late again. But no one would ask why. No one ever did. Because to the outside world, everything in my life looked perfect. That morning was like many others. I moved like a machine, wiping the floor, washing my hands, putting on a clean shirt. I avoided looking at the mirror. I never liked what I saw there. My eyes always looked tired, my shoulders too low, my smile too forced. But I had learned how to hide the truth. I had become very good at that. The truth was, I had been breaking for years, and no one saw it. Not even me in the beginning. When we first met, he was gentle. That is what I remember most. He opened doors, carried my bag, said he liked the way I laughed, even though I did not laugh often. He said I was special, that no one had ever made him feel so calm. He told me I completed him. I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. At that time, I was tired of being alone. I wanted someone to hold me, to choose me. He made me feel chosen. I thought it was love. And maybe it was, for a while. Or maybe it was something else I did not understand back then. It started slowly. First, he commented on my clothes. He said certain colors did not suit me. Then, he told me my friends were not good for me. They did not understand me like he did. I stopped meeting them after work. I thought I was making a choice, but I was only becoming smaller. Soon, he had an opinion about everything. My hair, my voice, my job, my dreams. He said my dreams were silly. He laughed when I said I wanted to go back to school. He told me I was not smart enough, not strong enough. He said I should be happy with what I had. And so I stayed home more. I listened. I followed. I tried harder. There was a day when I missed a call from him. Just one. When I called back, he did not shout. He did something worse. He said nothing at all. The silence was heavy. It made me feel like I had done something terrible. I apologized again and again. He finally said he forgave me, and I was so grateful. Like a child who had been punished and then told they could go back outside to play. That was the pattern. He would control, I would obey. He would hurt, I would fix. And in between, he gave me just enough kindness to keep me close. It was like being cold all the time, and sometimes, for a moment, someone gave me a blanket. I called that love. The hardest part was that he never hit me. There were no bruises, no scars anyone could see, but his words stayed inside me like sharp stones. He told me I was lucky he chose me. He said no one else would ever love me. He said I was nothing without him. And over time, I believed it. I stopped wearing makeup. I stopped reading books. I stopped laughing. I stopped singing to myself when I cooked. I became quiet. I became small. and every day I told myself I was safe because he did not hit me, but I was not safe. I was only surviving. The worst night of all came in winter. It was raining hard and the lights went out. I was standing by the window listening to the storm when he walked in. He said I had not cleaned properly, that the food was cold, that I was lazy, that I was making him angry on purpose. I stood there, quiet, my hands shaking again. He walked closer, his voice low but sharp. I could not look at him. I knew that if I did, I would cry, and crying made him angrier. He hated tears. He said they were a sign of weakness, so I held them back. That night, I slept on the floor. He said I needed to learn. I remember the cold, the feeling of the wooden floor against my cheek. I remember thinking, maybe if I stop breathing, everything will be quiet again. But I woke up the next morning, and something inside me had changed. I started keeping notes, small things, times he spoke cruelly, things he broke when angry, people I had stopped talking to. I began to write it all down in a notebook and hide it in the back of the wardrobe. It was my truth, written in black ink, hidden where even I had trouble finding it. Then I began walking in the evenings. I told him it was for exercise, but really, I just wanted silence. I needed space to remember who I was before him. Sometimes I sat on a bench in the park and watched people walk past. A mother with a stroller, 2 girls laughing, an old man feeding birds. They all looked free. One evening, I saw a poster for a support group on a notice board by the library. It said, "You are not alone. We believe you." I read it twice. Then I took a photo. I deleted it 10 minutes later. But something stayed in me after that. A week later, I went to that library and wrote down the address on a piece of paper. I put it in my pocket. I never planned to go, but I liked the idea that maybe one day I could. It took months, but finally I walked into that group. My heart was beating fast. I could barely speak, but when I sat in that room, I heard stories that sounded like mine. Women who looked strong but had been broken. Women who had survived. They said things I had felt for years but had never been able to say out loud. For the first time, I felt seen. That was the beginning, not the end. Healing was not fast. It was not clean. Some days, I still felt guilty. Some nights, I missed him. Not the real him, but the idea of being loved. But I kept going. I kept showing up. I found a new job. I painted my room a soft blue. I started calling my sister again. I even bought a plant, and I kept it alive. 6 months later, I moved out. I packed my things while he was away. I left no note. I just left because I owed him nothing, and I owed myself everything. Now, I live alone. I still wake up afraid sometimes, but the fear passes. I am learning to sleep again, to laugh again, to dream again. I am not all the way healed, but I am on my way, and I know now I am not nothing. I never was. Before we continue, I would love to know, Where are you listening from? Which city? Which country? Share it in the comments. And if you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to hear more every week. The first time I slept in my new place, I kept all the lights on. I lay in bed, fully dressed, listening to every sound. The fridge made a soft hum. Pipes clicked behind the walls. I thought I heard someone walking outside my door, but it was only the wind. Still, I could not sleep. I had imagined that freedom would feel like happiness, like sunshine on my face or music playing from a car window. But that first night, freedom felt like fear. I was not used to silence. I was not used to being alone with my thoughts. And the quiet scared me, but I stayed. The next morning, I made myself coffee and drank it slowly by the window. I watched the sun rise over the buildings. There was a boy riding his bike down the street. He wore a yellow backpack and kept looking over his shoulder. He looked free. That day, I went to work wearing a red sweater I had not worn in years. He used to say it made me look too loud. But that morning, I wanted to be loud. I wanted to be seen. People at the office smiled at me. One woman said I looked different. I said thank you. I had stopped wearing color during those years with him. My clothes were all black, gray, and dark blue. Now I started buying secondhand sweaters in soft pink and green. I wore earrings again. I painted my nails. Little things, but they felt like small steps back to myself. Still, the past did not leave easily. There were nights when I woke up in panic. I would reach for my phone thinking I had missed a call, but there were no missed calls, no angry messages, no one waiting to punish me. I was alone. I was safe. I had to remind myself again and again. At work, I made mistakes. I felt slow, unsure. I second-guessed my emails, reread every sentence twice. I kept thinking someone would tell me I was doing everything wrong, that I was not good enough. But no one did. In fact, my manager thanked me for finishing a project early. She said I was dependable. I nearly cried. Healing was not a straight line. Some days were light, others were heavy. I started writing again in the notebook I had once used to hide the truth. Now, I wrote things I noticed, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery near my flat, the sound of rain on the roof, the way I felt after a long shower. One evening, I went back to the support group. A new woman joined that night. She sat in the corner, arms crossed, eyes lowered. When it was her turn to speak, she shook her head. She said she was not ready. I knew how that felt. So after the meeting, I walked over and sat beside her. I told her that no one needed to speak if they did not want to, that I had once come and said nothing too. She looked at me and asked if it got better. I said it did. Slowly, but it did. She smiled. Only a little, but it was a start. In that group, I found something I had never known before. Understanding without judgment. No one asked why I had stayed. No one called me weak. They knew. They had been there. Over time, I told my sister everything. We had grown apart while I was with him. He said she was jealous of me, that she was a bad influence. I had believed him. Now, when I told her the truth, she cried. She said she had always waited for me to come back. And I did. We met for lunch every Saturday after that. She brought me flowers once. Another time, she gave me a book with poems about strength. I read one of them every night. My favorite line was, "Your silence was not your weakness. It was your survival." I also started therapy. It was not easy. The first session, I sat with my hands in my lap, afraid to speak. The room smelled of lemon and old books. The therapist asked me why I had come. I said I did not know, but I did. I just could not say it yet. In time, I told her everything about how I stopped recognizing myself, about how I was told I was nothing again and again until I believed it. She listened. She asked gentle questions. She never told me what to do. She helped me find the answers inside myself. One afternoon, I walked past a mirror and stopped. Not because I hated what I saw, but because I didn't. I looked tired, yes, but I also looked alive. There was something new in my eyes, or maybe something old that had returned. A small light, a quiet kind of strength. I went back to painting, something I used to love. I bought cheap canvas boards and watercolor tubes. My hands were shaky at first, but after a few days, the colors began to flow. I painted a field of flowers with a small, empty chair in the middle. It felt honest. There were still bad days. Some days, I missed him, or what I thought he was. I missed the way he held me when I cried, the way he whispered kind things after saying cruel ones. I missed the illusion of safety, but then I would remember the fear, the silence, the weight of his words in my body, and I would breathe again. One day, I saw his name in my inbox. It was a short message. He said he hoped I was well, that he had been thinking about me, that he missed me. My hands started to sweat. My stomach turned, but then I closed the message. I did not reply. I deleted it. And then I emptied the trash folder too. That night, I went for a long walk. The air was cool and the sky was pink with sunset. I passed the park bench where I used to sit in silence, trying to remember who I was. I sat there again, but this time I smiled. I was not the same person who sat there months ago. I was learning to speak gently to myself, to forgive myself for the years I lost. I was learning that love does not hurt, does not control, does not silence. I was learning that I was not weak for staying. I was strong for leaving. I was learning to heal. There was a Sunday morning when I woke up and did not feel afraid. I opened the window and let the air move through the room. The sky was soft gray, and a few leaves danced along the pavement outside. I sat on the edge of the bed, bare feet touching the floor, and felt still. It had been almost a year since I left. That day, I cleaned the whole apartment, not because I was scared of being told it was dirty, but because I wanted to. I played music, something gentle and warm, and let it move through every corner of the space. I found joy in the small things, folding my clothes, watering my plant, washing the dishes slowly. I was beginning to trust peace again. Later, I walked to the small bookstore near the train station. It had soft yellow lights and old wooden shelves that smelled like history. I looked through the shelves and found a novel I used to love. A story I had read in college before everything changed. I bought it without thinking twice. I made tea that afternoon and lay on the couch reading. The words felt familiar, like a friend who had waited patiently for me to return. I read for hours. I cried a little too, not because the story was sad, but because I could finally enjoy something again without guilt. At the next group meeting, I shared something new. I told them I had started smiling at people on the street. Not everyone, just sometimes. A man who held the door open, a woman who helped a child with a backpack. And in those small moments, I felt connection. I felt like I was part of the world again. They clapped softly when I finished speaking, not out of pity, but out of recognition. They knew what it meant, how hard it was to feel anything again after being shut down for so long. I smiled back at them and meant it. A few weeks later, I signed up for a weekend painting class. It was held in a quiet studio above a bakery. The room smelled like fresh bread and paint. There were 10 of us, different ages, different faces, but all there to create. I felt nervous. I thought maybe I would not fit in, but I stayed. We painted still life on the first day. A bowl of oranges, a glass bottle, a white cloth. I watched the teacher, listened carefully, and painted without fear of being judged. When I finished, I felt proud. I had made something. I had put something in the world that had not been there before. One of the women in the class asked if I wanted to get coffee after. I almost said no, but then I said yes. Her name was Leah. She had kind eyes and a soft voice. We sat by the window in a small cafe and talked about art, about growing older, about how quiet pain can be. I did not tell her everything, but I told her enough. She listened. And when I got home that evening, I felt light. I began to feel strong in my body again. I joined a yoga class. I moved slowly, carefully, learning how to breathe deeper. At first I felt strange, like I did not belong there. But after a few sessions, I started to look forward to it. The silence, the stretching, the feeling of taking care of myself. I also got better at saying no. When a colleague tried to put extra work on my desk, I said no. When a friend asked to meet late on a night I needed rest, I said no. At first I felt guilty, but then I remembered how long I had said yes to things that hurt me, and saying no became a kind of power. One night my phone rang. I did not recognize the number. I answered carefully. It was him. He asked how I was, said he had been thinking about me, said he missed my calm voice. I felt the old fear rise for a moment, but I stayed quiet and calm. I told him not to call again. He paused. Then he said, in that same quiet, cutting tone, that I would never find anyone like him again. I said, I hoped that was true. Then I hung up. I sat for a while after that. My hands were steady. My heart was not racing. I made tea and watched the steam rise from the cup. I had survived him. I had walked through fire and come out stronger. In therapy, I talked about the call. My therapist said something that stayed with me. She said that healing is not about forgetting the past. It is about building a future that is no longer shaped by it. I liked that. I began to write letters I never sent. One to my younger self, telling her she was not stupid, not weak, not difficult to love. One to my sister, thanking her for waiting. One to him, saying everything I had never dared to say. I tore that one up afterward, but it felt good to write it. Spring came. The streets were full of light. Trees bloomed slowly, as if waking from a long sleep. I sat on a park bench with a notebook in my lap, writing small things. Things I saw. Things I hoped for. I was not writing to fix anything. I was writing because I could. A man walked by with a dog. The dog barked playfully and ran in circles. I smiled. The man smiled back and said, "Good morning." I said good morning too. It was a moment, nothing more. But it reminded me that I was open again. Not to him, not to anyone in particular, but to life. I do not know what will happen next. I still have hard days. I still carry the memories, but I also carry strength now. I carry peace. I carry the knowledge that I left, that I healed, that I built something new. And that is everything. This is not the end of my story. It is the beginning. I am not nothing.